السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ومولانا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا قائد الغر المحجلين وشفيع المذنبين وسيد ولد آدم ولا فخر محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه. ثم أما بعد. So I bring you greetings and salam in this very auspicious and blessed occasion of the beginning of Ramadan. Whether you started today or you started yesterday, the month of Ramadan is upon us, of the year 1442 after the hijrah of our Prophet ﷺ. And since Ramadan was prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the second year after the hijrah, so it has been approximately, or this is the 1441st approximately Ramadan that the Ummah is participating in and commemorating and availing itself of the many blessings and the barakah and the nafahat and the mercies that come specifically in this 9th month of the Islamic year. And this is no small accomplishment, and it's no small feat really to think about in terms of the great blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has bestowed upon us, that communities for 1440 years have fasted this blessed month, have stood in the evening or at night in prayer and in recitation of the Quran and in the ponderance of the meanings of the glorious Quran, and this has been going on for over a millennium. And it is a great blessing that we can be part of that and we can participate in that. And for however number of years that we live and how number of Ramadans that we see, whether they become 40 or 50 or 60, we are really, really fortunate to be just a small part of that. And a small part in the sense of the overall picture of Ramadan, but also a great part for our own individual mercy, our own individual forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and inshallah our own individual deliverance to the gates of paradise and to be delivered away from the gates of hellfire. And as the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, in this blessed month, this is the month that the gates of heaven are cast open and the gates of hellfire closed shut, and that the demonic forces are chained. صُفَدَتْ أَوْ سُلْسِلَةِ الشَّيَاطِينِ in this blessed and beautiful month. So we congratulate the Ummah, we congratulate Muslims worldwide, and we congratulate ourselves that we have made it, and we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has blessed us to at least witness the beginning of this blessed month. And so I wanted to take the opportunity in the first of 3 sessions to talk about some of the merits of Ramadan and to talk about some of the aspects of this very specific spiritual training that we undergo in this blessed month of Ramadan. And we know that the month of Ramadan and the fasting is not merely about hunger and thirst. For the Prophet ﷺ said, رُبَّ صَائِمٍ لَيْسَ مِنْ صِيَامِهِ إِلَّا الْجُوَى وَالْعَطَشِ. And he said, some are the ones who are fasting, or perhaps the one who is fasting has nothing more than fasting except hunger and thirst. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has indicated in the verse of the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed or written for you as it has been prescribed or written for those before you, so that you may find taqwa, so that you may reach taqwa. And the specific hadith I also wanted to share, there is narrated by a number of narrators, including Al-Bayhaqi في شعب الإيمان and Al-Hakim في المستدرك عن سلمان الفارسي رضي الله عنه قال: خطبنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في آخر يوم من شعبان فقال: أيها الناس، قد أظلكم شهر عظيم، شهر مبارك، شهر فيه ليلة خير من 1000 شهر، جعل الله صيامه فريضة وقيام ليله تطوعا، من تقرب فيه بخصلة من الخير كان كمن أدى فريضة فيما سواه ومن أدى فيه فريضة كان كمن أدى 70 فريضة فيما سواه هو شهر الصبر والصبر ثوابه الجنة وشهر المواساة وشهر يزداد فيه رزق المؤمن من فطر فيه صائما كان مغفرة لذنوبه وعتق رقبته من النار وكان له مثل أجره من غير أن ينتقص من أجره شيء قالوا ليس كلنا نجد ما يفطر الصائم فقال يعطي الله هذا الثواب من فطر صائما على تمرة أو شربة ماء أو مذقة لبن هو شهر أوله رحمة وأوسطه مغفرة وآخره عتق من النار من خفف عن مملوكه غفر الله له واعتقه من النار واستكثروا فيه من 4 خصال خصلتين ترضون بهما ربكم وخصلتين لا غنى بكم عنهما فأما الخصلتان اللتان ترضون بهما ربكم فشهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وتستغفرونه وأما اللتان لا غنى بكم عنهما فتسألون الله الجنة وتعوذون به من النار. So part of a longer hadith and the theme for these 3 sessions talking about the beginning of the month as mercy and the middle of the month as forgiveness, maghfirah, and the last of the month as deliverance or emancipation from the hellfire. And this hadith was narrated by Salman al-Farisi radiyallahu anhu, where he said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the last day of Sha'ban said to the people, Ya ayyuhan nas, O people, has come upon you or will soon come upon you this great month, this blessed month, this month that one night in it is better than 1,000 months, Laylat al-Qadr, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was referring to. He has made its fasting an obligation, and he has made its standing in prayer at night a voluntary meritorious act. Whoever comes close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from something of good, like someone who does a obligatory act in other than the month of Ramadan. So if you offer something that is voluntary in the month of Ramadan, then it has the reward of something that is like something that's obligatory in another month. And we know that the reward for the obligatory is always more than the reward for the voluntary. وَمَنْ أَدَّى فِيهِ فَرِيضَةً, and whoever does something that is a fard, that is obligatory in of itself, then it's like you did 70 of those same acts in another month. So this is what we call مُضَاعَفَةِ الْأَجْر, which we'll talk about in a second. So the increase in blessings and increase in reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it is the month of patience. And the reward of patience is paradise. And it is a month of sympathy and consolation. And it is a month that the sustenance of the believer is increased. Whoever prepares the meal for a fasting person or feeds a fasting person, then this will be a forgiveness of their sins. And it will be an emancipation or deliverance of themselves from the fire. And he will have a similar reward to the one that was fasting without the one who was fasting losing any of that reward. So it's like you fasted for yourself and you fasted for the other person when you feed them to break their fast. And then some of them said of the Sahaba, they said, not everyone can find what we have enough to feed a fasting person. In other words, we barely have enough for ourselves. The Prophet ﷺ responded in response that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives this reward for someone even who gives a date, a tamra, or even a sharba, or just a mouthful of water, or even a taste of milk. And it is a month that its beginning is mercy, that its middle is maghfirah or forgiveness, and that its ending is emancipation or deliverance from the hellfire. Whoever lightens the load of their servant or their bondspeople will have their sins forgiven and will be emancipated from the hellfire. And then he said, وَاسْتَكْثِرُوا فِيهِ مِنْ أَرْبَعَ خِصَالٍ, and he urges the people that you increase from 4 things, from 4 merits. 2 of them that you will please your Lord, and 2 of them that you will be unable to suffice without. As for the two that will please your Lord, فَشَهَادَةُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. So to the shahada that there is no God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَتَسْتَغْفِرُونَهُ, and to seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as for the two that you cannot suffice without, that you cannot do without, that you should ask Allah paradise and that you should seek refuge from the hellfire. So many of the themes that we saw in this hadith are themes of the deen in general. And fasting, even though it comes, the fard comes 1 month out of the year, it is from the pillars of Islam. So when the Prophet ﷺ was asked about Islam in the hadith Jibreel, أخبرني عن الإسلام, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned as one of the 5, وصيام رمضان أو أن تصوم رمضان أو صوم رمضان, to fast the month of Ramadan. So when we say pillar, right, or when he said بني الإسلام على خمس, right, in the other hadith, بني الإسلام على خمس, Islam has been built upon 5 things or 5 pillars. So in other words, if you were to take this pillar away, and let's call it a building, the building of your deen, of your personal deen, then you would be missing a part. You'd be missing something that would be the foundation of your deen. And so we also know from this sharia that it is all ni'am and nothing of niqam. There's nothing in our acts of worship or ritual acts of worship or in the sharia itself that is there as a punishment or is there as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala seeking retribution upon us. Hasha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, huwa al-ghafur al-rahim. Right? Amongst his names, huwa al-ghafur wa huwa al-rahim. He is the oft forgiving and he is the most merciful. And he is not in need to punish us in this way. So then it is for our own benefit. The Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is nothing in it except there is a benefit for the one who follows it and for the ones who takes the sunan, the ways and the practices of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as their own personal practice. So that means there is a great, great meaning attached to fasting, a great, great meaning attached to the month of Ramadan. And it's done over 30 days, over 29 days. And it's done as a community. All of us, all of the Muslims worldwide are doing it relatively or approximately at the same time within a day or two of one another. So there is a very strong communal factor to Ramadan. And the Prophet ﷺ prayed the qiyam for a number of days. He prayed the tarawih with the Sahaba, with the companions, and Sayyidina Umar later reinstituted it as a practice. So communal prayers together in the evenings, where one can do it with the community and one can also, in addition or as a substitute, can also pray by themselves. And as the hadith mentions, it's tatawwa, right? It's something that's voluntary. And though it is voluntary, it was something that the Prophet ﷺ was exhorted to do by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا نصفه وانقص منه قليلا أو رتل عليه ورتل القرآن أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا. يا أيها المزمل, the one who was wrapped up. When the Prophet ﷺ came back from the encounter he had with Jibreel in Hira for the first time, كان مزملا, he had something like this and wrapped around him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressing the Prophet ﷺ, يا أيها المزمل قم الليل إلا قليلا, stand in the night except a little bit. نصفه وانقص منه قليلا أو زد عليه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا. So recite half of the night or a third of the night or more than that if you can. إنا سنلقي عليك قولا ثقيلا, right? We will give you this heavy word, قولا ثقيلا, the words of the Quran. إن ناشئة الليل هي أشد وطأ وأقوم قيلا. And the ناشئة of the layl, أشد وطأ. The nashia of the layl, the ritual practice of the night, is more impactful. It's more penetrative. It has greater power than that of the day. وَأَقْوَمُ قِيلًا, more impactful on the spirit of the human being. And so there are certain night practices. We look at the contrast of the day and the night in Ramadan. We see that it's almost like flipped, the opposite of what we usually do. So the day is about not doing certain things, right? It's about not eating. It's about not drinking. It's about not taking part in intimate relation with one's spouse. But it's about being in such a state, what we call this malaki state, this angelic state, so that one may also be prepared for the night, where the action of the night now is different. So rather than devoting the night to sleep, we devote the night to reflection and to contemplation and to dhikr and to qiyam al-layl and to standing in the light and standing in the night, the light and the night, the light of the night, and standing and receiving the many blessings, the myriad blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are described, that are specific to the night, as we saw in that verse from Surah Al-Muzammil. إِنَّ نَاشِئَةَ اللَّيْلِ هَيَ أَشَدُّ وَطَأً وَأَقْوَمُ قِيلًا. Al-wata means how something that you walk over, how impactful it is upon you. So it's more impactful, that prayer of the night. And one of the principles of the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to be in a state of piety, or to be in a state of prayer, or to be in a state of remembrance while others are not. In other words, to be going against the predominant or the prevailing sentiment or culture of your society. And so for most people, night is the time of sleep, and night is the time of ghaflah. Night is the time of disremembrance. Night is the time of remissness. Night is the time of trying to fit in as much of partaking in carnal and physical delights as possible before the routine of the next day comes about. But in Ramadan, we change that culture. There's a different culture instituted, or a different culture that we aim to institute. So we have this culture of tranquility and serenity and self-sufficiency, doing without food and drink and otherwise during the day. And then when the night comes upon us, we allow ourselves to soak in the meanings of mercy and the meanings of forgiveness and the meaning of deliverance, that you will be in a heightened state to receive more than you were if you were not fasting. So think of the fasting as a way, as a tahyi'ah, as a way, or ista'dad, to put yourself in preparation, and then with that preparation comes the cleansing preparation, then comes the part of harvesting the fruits that will come when that is prepared well enough. So think about, for example, preparing a field to be farmed or to be planted. It takes a little bit of tilling, and it takes a bit of a preparation. Then the seeds are planted, and then you irrigate it. But then once this preparation takes place, then the plants can grow and the trees can grow, and then they can bear fruit. And many have also mentioned that this is the state of takhliya qabla tahliya, or takhalli qabla tahalli. So takhalli means to empty oneself of, or removal of obstacles, and removal of vice, and removal of encumbrances that otherwise would prevent you from availing yourself of the distinct mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's two types of mercies that come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're both mentioned in this verse that I want to recite to you. وَرَحْمَتِي وَسَعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ فَسَأَكْتُبُهَا لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ بِآيَاتِنَا يُؤْمِنُونَ الذين يتبعون النبي الأمي. تكملة الآية الأخرى. ورحمتي وسعت كل شيء. And my mercy has encompassed everything. Here, shay is the most or simplest way to refer to everything. رحمتي وسعت كل شيء. We even say في مقام التعليم الله شيء, a thing. So the mercy of Allah has encompassed all things. All things have been encompassed by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is called the mercy that encompasses all. And some have referred this back to Sifat al-Rahman, or Ism al-Rahman. So one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the proper names, is Ar-Rahman. قُلْ يَدْعُ اللَّهُ إِذَا الرَّحْمَنَ فَإِنَّمَا تَدْعُو فَلَهُ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. Call upon Allah or call upon Ar-Rahman, the two proper names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He is the one that has all of it. Asma al-Husna, فَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى. Call upon either one. And these are considered the proper names that encompass all of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah, lafz al-jalala, is said to encompass all of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second only to that is Ism ar-Rahman. And even the pagan Arabs during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they didn't know what this Rahman meant. It was like a new word to them. They weren't aware of what it meant. And when the Prophet ﷺ would begin matters by saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, they said, who is this Rahman that you're referring to? Because they knew the word Allah, they knew the name of Allah, and they would say Bismikallahumma is how they would write their documents and how they would start their matters. Bismikallahumma, by the name of Allah, O Allah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this other name of His, Ar-Rahman. And so this gives you an indication that Rahmah, that the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the kind of overarching theme of the divine nature in this world and in the next world. Rahmah. وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. Then in the second part of the verse, فَسَأَكْتُبُهَا لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ. فَسَأَكْتُبُهَا لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ. And I will prescribe it, or I will decree it, for those who show taqwa, or الَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ, or those, I should say, practice taqwa. لِلَّذِينَ يَتَّقُونَ. This, they said, is a more distinctive type of mercy that is specific to the believers, and is specific to the muttaqeen, and specific to the muhsineen. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says in the Quran, إِنَّ رَحْمَةَ اللَّهِ قَرِيبٌ مِنَ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. The rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is qareeb, right? Is close to the muhsineen. So al-muttaqeen, al-muhsineen, al-mu'mineen, al-muttaqeen, all of those groups, right? And they're generally attributes and could be of the same person. They are the ones, these are the keys by which we can unlock the rahmah of ar-Rahim. So some of the mufassirun said the Rahim, the aspect of Rahim refers to this very specific rahmah that is for the believers. So the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always there, the general rahmah. وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. And the rahmah in the nature that is distinctive to the believers is always there. But in the month of Ramadan, there is something very specific about that particular rahmah that we find in the month of Ramadan, that we can avail ourselves of. And this rahmah, it can be unlocked. The key to it is observing the month of Ramadan. فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْ. Whoever witnesses the month of Ramadan, whoever is there in the month of Ramadan, فَلْيَصُمْ. Let them fast to unlock the nafahat, the gentle breezes and associated blessings that come with the rahmah of Ramadan, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to avail ourselves of when we observe this blessed month. And fasting then is one of those keys. As we see from the hadith that we also just narrated, this month is also called the month of sabr, the month of patience, the month of forbearance, the month of fortitude. So by being patient with this command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by being patient with this process of takhalli, right? Takhalli is hard work. Takhalli means you're removing vice. Takhalli means that you are going against the general nature of yourself, right? Which looks towards self-preservation and which looks towards taking part in anything that is delightful and pleasing and delicious and easy. These are what the things that the nafs, the lower soul, craves. And by denying the nafs these things during the day of Ramadan, then that which was marginalized by the nafs, that which was taking a back seat to the nafs, now has the opportunity to be at the forefront. And what I'm talking about here is that malaki, that insani, right, that angelic, higher human form of ourselves, namely our spirit, then can avail itself of all of these blessings that are there. And it is only by this encumbering nafs, right, that the Prophet ﷺ described in the hadith, أَعْدَ عُدُوَّكَ نَفْسُكَ الَّتِي بَيْنَ جَنْبَيْكَ, that the worst enemy that you have is this nafs that is part of you. This is what keeps you from seeing all those things. And so by this process of 29 and 30 days, this what we can say an intensive program of takhalli, then inshallah we can enjoy the tahalli of the nights of Ramadan. Tahalli then is taking in the the nafahat and the blessings and the meanings and so forth. And this means that we do not just substitute all of the things that we used to do during the day and then put them at night, right? So it doesn't mean that we spend the day in sleep and then at night we spend the day in eating and then do the same thing. No, Ramadan is not supposed to be a month of less production also. Some people are under the impression, well, we're going to take it easy at work and I don't have to do as hard, work as much. But Ramadan came the great futuhat. Ghazwat Badr was the 17th of Ramadan. Fath Makkah was in Ramadan. Jibreel alayhi salam going to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, reviewing the Quran with him, all of it was in Ramadan. So Ramadan is not supposed to be a month of less production, as it were, or less doing, or being remiss in your other obligations. Ramadan is not an excuse to be more irritable, or to be less forgiving, or to be more coarse and austere in your relationships with people because you use the excuse, oh, I'm fasting. Ramadan is not the month either that we seek more accommodations from those who don't understand Ramadan. No, Ramadan is about being better than you ever were and being better than you are during the rest of the year. You can be more productive, you can be more insightful, you can be more soulful, you can be more compassionate, more merciful, which you should be, all of these things in the month of Ramadan. So it's not something that we just want to get through and get over with and then we get back to normal. We want Ramadan to introduce a new normal to us. This new normal that is informed by unlocking the keys of mercy that are very specific to this blessed and Mubarak and wonderful and fortuitous month. So some of the themes that I want to talk about in terms of mercy, specifically to this month, and we said there's two types of mercy. There's the mercy that encompasses all, that believer and non-believer enjoy, and then there's the mercy that is specific to the believers. Then there are these types of mercies that become even more specific in the month of Ramadan. And amongst those mercies, for example, in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, لا خلوف فم الصائم أطيب عند الله من المسك, that the smell of the fasting person of their mouth is atyab, right, is more beautiful, is better than the smell of musk. And this sounds like kind of simple words, simple hadith, but the meaning is deep. And it's saying that even though you suffer this, perhaps, when you don't eat all day and then your kind of stomach is empty and you don't have a chance to wet your tongue and your throat, then a smell may come out from the stomach, and that's not very actually pleasant. من حيث الظاهر, right, from the unostensible aspect. But according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, من حيث الباطن والحقيقة, right, looking at it from its other perspective and its other aspect, from الحقيقة, from its inner reality, لا أطيب من المسك. It is more pleasant and it is more sweet smelling than the smell of musk. This is a very specific mercy that comes to the fasting person. And the Prophet ﷺ also said, للصائم فرحتان, فرحة عند الصيام فرحة عند إفطاره, أو فرحة عند إفطاره فرحة عند لقاء ربه. For the Sa'im, there is two happinesses that they will find. A happiness when they break their fast and a happiness when they meet their Lord. And so this is also an indication there's another type of fasting, right? Not just صيام المفطرات والمأكولات, not just those things that according to the jurists break our fast, but also those things that will raise us in degrees in the Day of Judgment. Some of them said صوموا الدهر, fast for all of time and then break your fast in the next life, which means live a life of restraint, live a life of temperance, live a life of iffa and piety and ithar, right, and altruism, preferring that which Allah loves over what you love. Fast in that manner in the dunya, and then you will find more than you ever expected in the next life. And this is a higher form of fasting, what Imam al-Ghazali referred to as the fasting of khassat al-khassa, or fasting of khusus al-khusus. So the highest form of fasting is to fast from everything that busies you or makes you busy or distracts you from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that would mean a muraqabah, a vigilance of the eyes and a vigilance of the ears, and even eventually a vigilance of one's thoughts. So to have muraqabah, to have vigilance even on the level of your thoughts. And in order to do this, one must have tawfiq, and one must have inayah and hidayah. One must have divine success from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One must have divine guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one must have also this other thing we call al-inayah. Al-inayah means a special considerate care from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the month of Ramadan is also the month to avail yourself of this inayah al-khassa, al-inayah al-ilahiyah, right? So that everything that you hear, everything that you see will be of you the prism of the divine command and the divine will. And, just think about the verse in the Quran, وَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. Remember me and I remember you. There's no fasl in between these two words in the Quran. It doesn't say فَاذْكُرُونِي وَأَذْكُرْكُمْ. فَاذْكُرُونِي أَذْكُرْكُمْ. يعني جواب الطلب in Arabic. So it's a direct response to your dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then is Allah's dhikr of you. You remembering Allah is Allah remembering you. And Allah also says in the Quran, يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَهُ أَذِلَّةً عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ عِزَّةً عَلَى الْكَافِرِينَ يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَهُ يُحِبُّهُمْ وَيُحِبُّونَهُ. He loves them and they love him. Your love of Allah is Allah's love of you. Your love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means that Allah loves you because He put in your heart your love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is from, I believe, some of the meanings of inayah, and some of the meanings of hidayah and tawfiq, and some of the meanings of the vast, vast mercy that we can avail ourselves of this blessed, blessed month. And we should also remember that this month, even though there is great opportunity for personal piety and personal spiritual development, that it is also an opportunity, as the Prophet ﷺ in the hadith earlier we mentioned, shahrul muwasa. Muwasa means sympathy and consolation to others. One of the meanings of Ramadan is that when we feel hunger in our bellies, we get some indication of how other people feel who go hungry every day. And there are many, many people who are in this predicament. And so Ramadan gives you the opportunity to share in what they feel. And when you share in what they feel, then you will be more compassionate and more merciful towards them. And just as important, the fasting in Ramadan, and we saw that second part of the hadith, مَنْ فَطَّرَ صَائِمًا. Whoever feeds a fasting person, right? Whoever, even with a drop of water or a small glass of water or even one date or even a taste of milk, then will have this great, great reward in Ramadan. Many, many times over than that one can imagine. 70, 700, even more. Everything is muda'af. Everything is increased in this blessed month of Ramadan. And so we should also focus as well on our relationships with our fellow human beings. If we have not made the intention to forgive everyone that we have an issue with from the beginning of the month, then we can still do it now. And we can still do it in the middle of the month, and we can still do it at the end of the month, and we can still do it after the month is over. But one of those keys to unlocking this inayah and these rahamat, very specific to specific people, is to forgive everyone who has wronged you, is to let bygones be bygones, is not to hold a grudge, especially amongst silat al-rahim. There is a direct proportional connection between silat al-rahim and al-rahamat. Al-rahim means the womb. In the hadith that is sahih, that is narrated by Imam al-Tirmidhi and others, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أنا الرحمن وأنا خلقت الرحم واشتقت لها من اسمي فمن وصلها وصلته ومن قطعها بتته. Allah says, I am the Rahman, أنا خلقت الرحم, I have created the womb, the Rahim, which is the same literal, triliteral root. واشتققت لها من اسمي, and even mentions in this hadith Qudsi, and I have derived the meanings of the Rahim from Ar-Rahman, from this divine name of Ar-Rahman. فَمَنْ وَصَلَهَا, So whoever connects al-rahim, in other words, silat al-rahim, those who have some kinship relationship with you, wasaltu, then I will extend my relationship with them. وَمَنْ قَطَعَهَا بَتَتُّهُ أو قطعته في رواية. And whoever cuts that off, then I cut them off. So one of the keys then also to this rahmah is silat al-rahim. This is where our family ties and our kinship ties should be increased and should be focused upon. And to drop all grudges and to extend that greeting and to extend the khair, the good, and to extend the blessing of Ramadan and to renew these ties of kinship and these family ties, and not to let another Ramadan pass where we have issues with our family. And wal-aqrab fal-aqrab, the most important being your immediate family, your parents, your children, brothers and sisters, but even beyond that, aunts, uncles, cousins, extended families, in-laws, these are all people who come somehow into the da'ira of silat al-rahim. And then even on a greater scale, all of humanity is one family. All of humanity is one family. We all came essentially from the same womb of our mother Eve and our father Adam, alayhim salam. So, avail yourself of these rahamat, of these mercies. We want our spiritual preparation and our spiritual development in this month to allow it to operate at its maximum potential. And so you could be fasting and you can be praying the qiyam and you can be reciting many juz of the Quran, but if you continue to insist upon not addressing those issues of family kinship and family ties and leave them to fester as they are and are waiting for the other person to come to you rather than you go to them, then you didn't completely avail yourself of all that you can avail yourself of this particular time and this wonderful month and this time of ease and facilitation and rahmah and nafahat and openings. You want to really avail yourself of the openings of this blessed month, then avail yourself of all the things that you could be doing. وَلَيْسَ ذَلِكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ بِعَزِيزٍ. We can't do it ourselves. We can't do it all by ourselves. Anything that we seek with help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be facilitated, and anything that we seek only by our own means will be very difficult to do. So, نَسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. We seek only help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all that we do and all that we may make available to us. إنه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه والحمد لله رب العالمين. أسأل الله لنا ولكم التوفيق والسداد في هذا الشهر المبارك، وأن يبارك لنا في هذا الشهر الكريم، وأن يتقبل منا صيامنا وقيامنا وركوعنا وسجودنا وكل ما سألناه إنه ولي ذلك والقادر عليه والحمد لله رب العالمين.